Commander Heian sat in her chair on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise. She had been staring at the same message for 20 minutes now. The message was not supposed to exist. It came through unofficial channels, bypassing all the normal communication systems. Someone wanted to talk to her privately, desperately. The message was simple. A species called the Vexnari was dying. Their sun was collapsing. They had only days left. The Galactic Council said no one could help them. There was a law, an old law called the Treaty of Non-Interference. The treaty said that no species could interfere with the natural events affecting another species. Even if that meant watching billions die, Heian was 43 years old. She had spent half her life in space. She had seen many things, good and bad. She had broken rules before when those rules made no sense. But this was different. This was bigger than anything she had done before. Daeho entered the bridge. He was her chief engineer, a quiet man who could fix almost anything. He looked at her face and knew something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked. Heian showed him the message. Daeho read it twice. His face grew serious. "How many?" he asked. 7 billion, Heian said. "Maybe more." Daeho was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that mattered. "Can we help them?" "We are not allowed to help them," Heian said. "The council has already said no." "That is not what I asked," Daeho said. "I asked if we can help them." "Not if we are allowed to." Heian smiled a little. This was why she liked Daeho. He always asked the right questions. "Maybe," she said. "If we had more ships. If we had time. If we were willing to lose everything we have built." She called a meeting. All the senior officers came to the conference room. There was Jiwoo, the medical officer. There was Tae-Yang, the best pilot Heian had ever seen. There was Min Seo, who handled all their communications. There was Sujin, who managed security. And there was Quan, the cargo master who somehow made their supplies last longer than they should. Heian explained the situation. She showed them the message from Vixtal, the Vexenari ambassador who had sent the desperate plea. She explained about the dying sun and the treaty that prevented anyone from helping. "If we do this," Heian said, "we will be criminals. Earth will disown us. The council will arrest us. We might lose our ship. We might never work in space again." The room was quiet. Tae-Yang spoke first. He was young, only 26. "How long do they have?" 72 hours, Heian said. "Maybe less. How many ships would we need?" asked Quan. "At least 8, Daeho said. "Maybe 10. We cannot save everyone, but we can save millions." Jiwoo looked at Heian. "Do you know other captains who would help?" Heian nodded. "I know 7 who might. They are all independent operators like us. They all have flexible views about rules." Minasio asked the hard question. "Why us? Why humans? There are species with bigger ships and more resources." "Because those species follow the treaty," Heian said. "Because humans have a reputation. We help people even when we should not. Even when it costs us." Sujin leaned forward. "Commander, I need to be clear about something. If we do this, we become outlaws. Not just us, but every human ship that joins us. We will make the council very angry." "I know," Heian said. "Good," Sujin said. "I just wanted to make sure you understand." I vote yes. One by one, they all voted yes. Even Quan, who was usually the most careful person on the ship. Even Jiwoo, who had a family back on Earth. Even young Tae-Yang, who had his whole career ahead of him. Heian felt something tight in her chest loosen. She had hoped they would say yes. She had been ready to go alone if they had said no. But this was better. Much better. "All right," she said. "Daeho, check all our systems. We need to be ready for hard work." Tae-Yang, plot a course to the Vexenari system. Minasio, start contacting the other captains. Use the private channels. Jiwoo, inventory all medical supplies. We will need everything we have. Quan, figure out how many people we can carry if we use every available space. Sujin, prepare for possible conflict with council enforcement. Everyone moved quickly. Heian sent a reply to Vixtal. The message was short. "We are coming. 72 hours. Prepare your people." Over the next 6 hours, 7 other human ships agreed to join them. Some captains Heian knew well. Others she had only met once or twice. But they all said yes. They all understood what this meant. The 8th ship was the Wandering Star, captained by an old woman named Sunhee. She had been in space longer than anyone Heian knew. When Heian explained the situation, Sunhee laughed. Finally, Sunhee said, "Someone wants to do something that matters. Count me in." The 8 ships met at a point between systems. They synchronized their navigation computers. Daiho and the other engineers shared information about their cargo capacities. They made plans, and backup plans for the backup plans. Hyan spoke to all the crews. Her face appeared on screens in 8 different ships. "What we are about to do is illegal," she said. "The council will be angry. Our governments will be angry. We will face consequences. But 7 billion people are going to die if we do nothing. I cannot do nothing. I will not do nothing. If any of you want to leave, leave now. No one will think less of you, no one left." The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. They would arrive at the Vexnari system in 6 hours. The Vexnari sun was already expanding. The radiation levels were rising. They had very little time. When they arrived, Hyun saw the Vexnari world for the first time. It was beautiful, with purple oceans and green continents. The cities glowed in the darkness. Millions of lights, millions of lives. The planet had 4 moons. The sun behind it was enormous, red and angry, already larger than it should be. Vixtal's voice came through the communication system. The translator made his words understandable, but Hyun could hear the emotion underneath. Relief, hope, desperation. "You came," Vixtal said. "I did not think, I hoped, but I did not think." "We came," Hyun said. "Now tell us how we can help." At that moment, alarms started blaring on every human ship. A council enforcement fleet had detected them. Messages flooded in, all saying the same thing. "Leave immediately. You are in violation of the Treaty of Non-Interference. Leave now or face arrest." Hyun looked at her crew. They looked back at her. No one spoke, but everyone understood. Hyun opened a broadcast channel. Her words went to the council ships, to the Vexnari planet, to the network that connected half the galaxy. "Not this time," she said. "Not today." The human ships moved into orbit around the dying world. The rescue operation began. New Vexnar was beautiful in a way that reminded Hyun of the old world. The colonists had tried to recreate their lost home. Purple oceans, green forests, cities that glowed at night. It was not the same. It could never be the same. But it was home. Hyun was 63 now. Her hair was gray. Her hands were steady but showed the marks of decades in space. She stood on the landing platform with Daiho beside her. He looked older too. They both did. Time had passed, 20 years since the rescue. It felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. Vixtal met them at the platform. He was old now, his chitin dulled with age, but his eyes were bright. He embraced Hyun in the Vexnari way, touching his forehead to hers. "Welcome, old friend. Welcome home." "This is not my home," Hyun said gently. "It is," Vixtal insisted. "You gave us this world, this life. You are always home here." They walked through the city. It was thriving. Markets full of goods, children playing in parks, people working, living, laughing. A civilization rebuilt from near extinction. Daiho watched everything with his careful engineer's eyes. The buildings were well constructed. The infrastructure was efficient. The Vexnari had learned from their past mistakes. "This city was built to last. How many live here now?" he asked. 14 million, Vixtal said. "We have grown, slowly, carefully. Every child born is precious to us. We remember how close we came to losing everything." They came to a large building in the center of the city. It was made of crystal and metal, beautiful and functional. Above the entrance were words in both Vexnari and the common galactic language. "The Hall of Echoes." "This is what I wanted you to see," Vixtal said. Inside, the hall was vast. The walls were covered with names. 247 names. The humans who had died during the rescue. Each name was engraved in crystal that caught the light. Below each name was a brief story. Who they were, what they had done, why they mattered. Hyun stood still. She had known most of these people. Hana, who had stayed on her failing ship to save her passengers. Young pilots who had flown through impossible conditions. Engineers who had worked until their hearts gave out. Medical officers who had treated patients until the radiation killed them. Every Vexnari child learns these names, Vixtal said quietly. They memorize them. They know the stories. We do not let them be forgotten. But the hall was more than a memorial. It was an archive. Crystal data cores lined the walls, millions of them. Each contained a story, a message, a piece of preserved memory. This is the memory gift, Vixtal explained. Every Vexnari alive has contributed. We have recorded our genetic information, our history, our culture, our art, our science, everything that makes us who we are. And we have copied it. distributed it across the galaxy, encrypted and protected, so that even if something happens to us again, we will not be truly lost. Deho examined the data cores with professional interest. This is impressive. How many copies? 17,000 locations across the galaxy, updated continuously. Other species have adopted the same system. The Relthi, the Mothkai, 16 others. We share our survival. We learn from each other. A young Vexnari approached them. He moved with the confidence of youth. His chiton was bright, unmarked by age. He looked at Jan with something close to reverence. This is Talix, Vixtal said. He was born aboard your ship during the evacuation. His mother went into labor in your cargo hold, Jan remembered. There had been several births during the journey. Jiwoo had delivered them all. She had worried that the children would not survive. But they had. I am honored to meet you, Talix said. I have spent my life learning about what you did, about why you did it. I work as a cultural ambassador now. I help other species understand each other, the way you and Mincio helped us understand humans. Mincio would be proud, Hyun said. Have you read her book? I have memorized it. It is my foundation, the idea that gratitude shapes civilizations. That help give an echoes forward. This is what drives my work. Talix led them deeper into the hall. They came to a special chamber. Inside was a single large crystal data core larger than all the others. This is for you, Talix said. From all of us. Every Vexnari alive has contributed something. A message. A thank you. A story about how the rescue changed their life. 14 million personal messages. He handed the crystal to Jan. It was heavy. It caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. We wanted you to know that we remember. We will always remember. And we promise to carry forward what you taught us, that when someone needs help, you help them, not because you expect something in return, but because it is the right thing to do. Hyun held the crystal. She felt something break inside her chest. Not sadness.
Something else.
Relief, maybe. Or validation. She had spent 20 years wondering if the price had been worth it. 247 deaths. Her own legal troubles. The years of attention and responsibility she had never wanted. But looking at this thriving city, at these people who would not exist without that desperate rescue, she knew. It had been worth it, she cried. She did not mean to. She had not cried about the rescue in years. But the tears came anyway. Deho put his hand on her shoulder. He did not say anything. He did not need to. The anniversary ceremony that evening was massive. Hundreds of thousands of Vexnari gathered in a great plaza. They spoke the names of the 247. They told their stories. They remembered, but they also celebrated. Because this was not just a day of mourning. It was a day of life. A day to honor those who had helped by helping others in turn. Jan stood on a platform and looked out at the crowd. Vixtal had asked her to speak. She had refused at first, but he had insisted. Just a few words. That is all we ask, she spoke simply, without preparation, from her heart. 20 years ago I made a choice. My crew made a choice. We chose to help when the rules said we should not. We knew the cost might be high, but we also knew that some things matter more than rules. Life matters. You matter. Every person, every species matters. That is all I have to say. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for living. Thank you for building this beautiful world. The crowd erupted. The sound was overwhelming. Not cheers exactly. Something deeper. Gratitude given voice. Later that night, as the celebration continued, an emergency alert sounded. Not on New Vexnar. Across the galaxy. The Galactic Rescue Initiative was mobilizing. Another crisis. Another species in danger. The Relthi this time. Not the whole species. A colony on the edge of their territory. A comet impact. Massive casualties expected. Help needed immediately. Nari, Deho's daughter, was commanding one of the response ships. She sent a message to her father on New Vexnar. We are launching now. Estimated arrival in 12 hours. Wish us luck. Deho showed the message to Hyun. She read it and smiled. Then Vixtal approached them. Several Vexnari ships are joining the initiative fleet. We received the call. We must answer. Just as you answered for us. Hyun looked at the old Vexnari ambassador. Then she looked at Deho. Then she made a decision she had not planned to make. The Horizon's promise is old, but she still flies. Teho, do you think we could make one more rescue run? Teho smiled. His quiet engineer smile. I think we could. The ship is old. We are old, but some things do not change. When people need help, we help. Within an hour, the Horizon's Promise was ready to launch. Hyun sat in her captain's chair. It felt right. Natural, like she had never left. The fleet assembled in orbit. Dozens of ships. Multiple species, human, Vexnari, Mothkai, wealthy survivors helping their own kind. Others, all united by a simple idea. Help those who need it. Act when action is needed. Do not wait for permission to do what is right. Nari's voice came through the communication system. All ships, this is Commander Nari of the Rescue Initiative. We have a mission. People are dying. We can save them. Let us show the galaxy what we have learned. Not this time. Not today. Hyun's old words, now a rallying cry for a new generation. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Hyun watched the stars streak past. She thought about how much had changed. How one desperate rescue had sparked a movement that transformed the galaxy. Those who help humanity are never forgotten. That had been the promise. But it was bigger than that now. Those who help anyone are never forgotten. The gratitude echoes forward. Across generations. Across worlds. Across species. What had started as 8 ships and a few hundred desperate people had become something beautiful. A galaxy that cared. That acted. That refused to be bystanders to suffering. Daeho sat at his engineering station monitoring systems. Everything was running smoothly. The old ship still had life in her. Like her captain, ready for another impossible rescue, he asked. Hyun smiled. Always. The Horizon's Promise flew toward another crisis. Another chance to help. Another opportunity to show that gratitude was not just a feeling but a force. A force that echoed across worlds and changed everything it touched. The story that had begun with a desperate plea and a dangerous choice had become something eternal. A principle, a way of life, a legacy that would outlast them all. Not this time. Not today. Not ever again would the galaxy stand by and watch when they could help. That was the real echo. Not just gratitude, but action. The understanding that every act of courage inspired more courage, that every life saved was a victory against indifference. The trial changed everything. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, like water wearing away stone, the galaxy began to shift. Young Ho's documentary spread across hundreds of worlds. People watched it in their homes, in schools, in government buildings. They saw the faces of the lost. They heard the stories of species that had died while the council debated proper procedures. More importantly, they saw what the humans had done. Regular people, not soldiers or heroes, just cargo ship crews who decided that some things mattered more than rules. Protests emerged on dozens of worlds. Young people mostly. They carried signs demanding treaty reform. They organized demonstrations outside council buildings. They used a simple slogan that became famous across the galaxy. Not this time. Not today. Hyun's words from the trial. The council tried to ignore the protests at first, but they grew larger. More species joined. Even some council members began speaking publicly about the need for change. Kithara became an unexpected leader in the reform movement. Her speech about her people's plague had resonated with millions. She pushed for immediate changes to the treaty. She found allies among other species who had similar stories of the council's failure to act. The humans, meanwhile, tried to return to normal life. Hyun went back to running cargo between colonies. But nothing was normal anymore. Everywhere she went, people recognized her. Some thanked her. Others asked for autographs. A few called her a criminal. She hated the attention. She was not a politician. She was not a celebrity. She just wanted to fly her ship and be left alone. But the galaxy would not leave her alone. 6 months after the trial, another crisis emerged. A species called the Relthi faced destruction from massive volcanic eruptions across their homeworld. Tectonic plates were shifting catastrophically. Scientists predicted 90% of the planet would be uninhabitable within weeks. There were 4 billion Relthi. The council began the usual procedures: committee meetings, impact assessments, legal reviews. The process would take months. The Relthi had weeks, but this time was different. This time, people did not wait for the council to act. A group of young Mothkai pilots announced they were organizing a rescue fleet. They used the same protocols Hyun had developed during the Vexnari evacuation. They asked for volunteers. Hundreds of ships responded. Not just Mothkai, dozens of species. Even some Vexnari, who had rebuilt enough to have a few ships operational, volunteered to help. Hyun received a message from the Mothkai fleet commander. They wanted her advice. They wanted to know how to organize such a massive operation. She sent them everything. All the data from the Vexnari rescue. All the procedures Daeho had developed. All the lessons they had learned the hard way. She did not join the rescue herself. She had done her part. Now it was time for others to act. The Relthi rescue was more successful than the Vexnari evacuation. More ships. Better planning, more time. They saved 3.2 billion Relthi. The loss of life was still terrible, but billions survived who would have died. The Council could not ignore this. 2 major rescue operations, both successful, both organized outside official channels. The treaty was being bypassed. The old system was collapsing. The reform process accelerated. Council members who had resisted change found themselves voted out by their own species. New representatives took their places. Representatives who had seen the rescues, who had participated in the protests, who believed that action mattered more than procedure. Bo-Ra, the attorney who had defended Hyun, became a key figure in drafting the new treaty. She worked with representatives from 30 species. They called it the Compact of Shared Responsibility. The compact was different from the old treaty. It still protected species from exploitation, but it created clear protocols for humanitarian intervention. If a species faced extinction and requested help, help could be given. Quickly, without months of debate. More importantly, the compact created the Galactic Rescue Initiative, a volunteer force funded by contributions from member species, trained and equipped to respond to catastrophes, ships on standby, supplies pre-positioned, ready to act within hours instead of months. Humans made up a large percentage of the initiative volunteers, but other species joined too. Mothkai, Vexnari, dozens of others. They trained together, learned from each other, built a culture of rapid response and mutual aid. Daeho's daughter Nari joined the initiative when she was 22. She became a captain 5 years later. She commanded one of the fastest response ships in the fleet. Nari had grown up hearing stories about her father's role in the Vexnari rescue, how he had worked for days without sleep, how he had improvised solutions to impossible problems, how he had helped save millions of people. She wanted to do the same. She wanted to help people. It was that simple. The initiative responded to its first major crisis 2 years after the compact was signed. A space station orbiting a gas giant suffered a catastrophic failure. 30,000 people, multiple species, all in danger. The initiative ships arrived within 6 hours. They evacuated everyone. No one died. The operation was clean, efficient, professional. Everything the Vexnari rescue had not been, but the Vexnari rescue was why the initiative existed. The messy, desperate, improvised operation that had started everything. The initiative used the protocols that Hyun and her crew had developed. They built on the lessons learned from those 72 desperate hours. The Vexnari rescue had been chaotic, but it had worked. And now, years later, that chaos had evolved into something organized and powerful. The Vexnari themselves had rebuilt their civilization on a new world they called New Vexnar. It was smaller than their old home, less developed, but it was theirs, and they were grateful for it. Bixtal had become an elder statesman. He worked in the new Vexnari government. He helped organize their society, but he also did something else. He created a tradition. Every year, on the anniversary of the rescue, every Vexnari would participate in a day of remembrance. They would speak the names of the 247 humans who had died helping them. They would tell stories about the rescue. They would teach their children what it meant to help strangers, but they would also do more than remember. On that day, every Vexnari would perform an act of service, help someone who needed it, give to those with less, volunteer their time or resources. They called it the Day of Echo, because the gratitude they felt echoed forward, because the help they had received should echo outward to others. Other rescued species adopted similar traditions. The Relthi, the survivors of the station disaster, each had their own version. But the principle was the same. Remember those who helped. Pass that help forward. Min Seo, who had been the communications officer on the Horizon's Promise, studied these traditions. She was a professor now, teaching cross-cultural communication at a prestigious university. She wrote a book about how gratitude shaped civilizations. The book became famous. It showed how single acts of courage could ripple across generations, how helping strangers created bonds that lasted, how gratitude was not just a feeling but a force that could change societies. The galaxy was different now. Not perfect, still full of problems and conflicts, but different. There was an understanding that had not existed before. A recognition that watching others suffer when you could help was not neutral. It was a choice. A bad choice. Hyun watched all of this from a distance. She was still flying her cargo ship, still avoiding attention when she could. But she was proud of what they had started, proud of how it had grown into something bigger than any of them had imagined. One evening, she received a message from Vixtal. He was inviting her to New Vexnar for the 20th anniversary of the rescue. He wanted her to see what they had built. He wanted to thank her properly. Hyun hesitated. She had avoided these kinds of events for years, but something made her accept. Maybe she wanted to see what had become of the people they had saved. Maybe she was just getting old and sentimental. She contacted Daeho. He was retired now, living quietly on a colony world. She asked if he would come with her. He agreed immediately. "I have always wondered," he said, "what happened to those children we saved, the ones we built those emergency pressure chambers for. I want to see if they grew up well." The Horizon's Promise, older now but still flying, set course for New Vexnar. The next chapter of the story was about to begin. The Vexnari evacuation system was a disaster. That was the first thing Daeho noticed when he reviewed their plans. The Vexnari had designed everything based on their rigid social hierarchy. The most important people would be evacuated first, then the next most important, and so on. It would have taken them 2 weeks to evacuate even a quarter of their population. They had 72 hours, maybe less. "We need to change everything," Daeho told Hyun. "Their system will not work. We need speed, not order." Vixtal did not like this at first. His people had traditions, rules, ways of doing things that had existed for thousands of years. But when Han showed him the numbers, when she explained that his way would save only 2 million people, while the human way could save 7 million, he agreed. The change was simple. Forget about social status. Take whoever was closest to the ships, fill every available space, move fast, save as many as possible. Taeyang flew his shuttle down to the surface. The atmosphere was already getting hotter. The red sun filled half the sky now, pulsing with dangerous energy. His instruments screamed warnings at him. Too much radiation, too much heat. But he kept flying. The landing platforms were chaos. Thousands of Vexnari waited, pressing forward. They were insect-like, with hard shells that shimmered in different colors. Their eyes were large and multifaceted. They clicked and buzzed when they talked, even though the translators turned their words into something humans could understand. Taeyang loaded his shuttle far beyond its normal capacity. The Vexnari were smaller than humans, lighter too. He could fit 200 where the shuttle was designed for 80. The ship complained, but it flew. On his third trip, he discovered a problem. The magnetic field around the planet was interfering with his navigation systems. The star's expansion was disrupting everything. He almost crashed trying to find the landing platform through the interference. Taeyang contacted Daeho. "We have a problem. The magnetic field is too strong. We cannot navigate properly." Daeho thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "We do not fight the magnetic field, we use it. The field is strongest at the poles. If we approach from the poles and use the field lines as a guide, we can navigate even when the instruments fail." It worked. Taeyang changed his approach pattern. The other pilots did the same. The evacuation speed increased. They were loading people twice as fast now, but then Jiwoo found another problem. The Vexnari children needed special environments. They could not breathe normal atmosphere during their development stage. They needed high-pressure chambers with specific gas mixtures. There were 30,000 children on the planet. The human ships were not equipped for this. Jiwoo came to Hyun with the bad news. "If we take the children, many will die during transport. Our ships cannot provide what they need, but if we leave them, they will all die when the radiation wave hits." Hyun looked at the data. She looked at Jiwoo. She thought about 30,000 children dying because human ships were not designed for alien biology. "Find Deho," she said. "Tell him we need a solution. Tell him we need it in 6 hours." Deho had not slept in 36 hours. He looked at the problem. The cargo holds. They could be modified. Not perfectly. Not safely by normal standards. But safely enough to keep the children alive for the journey to the nearest safe station. He worked without stopping. He pulled apart pressure systems from airlocks. He rerouted gas lines from the life support backups. He used emergency force fields to create sealed chambers. It was improvised. It was dangerous. It would probably only work once. But it would work. Mincio coordinated with the Vexnari parents. The children would go first. That broke with the new system of taking whoever was closest, but no one argued. Not even the Vexnari, who had to stay behind to make room for the children. While all this happened, messages kept coming from Earth. The colonial authority ordered them to stop. Corporate interests threatened lawsuits. Politicians demanded they return immediately. Some of the messages were sympathetic but firm. Others were angry. Jan read them all. Then she deleted them all. She had more important things to worry about. The sun continued to expand. The radiation levels increased hourly. The heat on the planet's surface was reaching dangerous levels. Some areas were already uninhabitable. They had to evacuate the equatorial cities first, before the heat made landing impossible. Taeyang pushed his shuttle to the limit. On his 47th trip, the heat shields began to fail. He had to make an emergency landing on the Horizon's Promise. The shuttle was done. It could not make another trip. Taeyang punched a wall in frustration. He had saved more than 8,000 Vexnari personally, but there were millions more down there. Deho found him in the shuttle bay. The young pilot was sitting on the floor, exhausted and angry. "You did well," Deho said. "Not enough," Taeyang said. "It is never enough. But it is something. Something is always better than nothing." The other ships were having similar problems. Shuttles were breaking down. Systems were failing. The crews were exhausted. But they kept going. Quan managed the logistics of storing millions of people on ships designed for thousands. He turned every corridor into sleeping space. He converted storage rooms. He even had people sleeping in the shuttle bays between landing cycles. It was cramped. It was uncomfortable. But everyone was alive. Sujin dealt with a different problem. The Council enforcement fleet was still in the system. They had not tried to stop the evacuation by force, but they were there watching, recording everything, building a case for the trial that would come later. She ignored them. If they wanted to arrest her later, fine. Right now she had work to do. On the second day, disaster struck. One of the human ships, the Morning Star, suffered a catastrophic engine failure while in low orbit. The ship began falling toward the planet. There were 40,000 Vexnari refugees on board. The captain, a woman named Hana, made a quick decision. She evacuated everyone she could to shuttles and escape pods. Then she stayed on the bridge with her engineering crew to keep the ship stable long enough for everyone else to escape. Hana saved 38,000 Vexnari. She and her crew of 16 did not make it off the ship. They died when the Morning Star burned up in the atmosphere. Hyun watched it happen. She could not look away. 16 humans dead, but 38,000 Vexnari alive. That night, Hyun received another message from Earth. This one was different. It came from her sister, who worked in the government. The message said, "The whole world is watching." Some people are angry. Some people are scared, but most people are proud. Keep going. We will deal with the consequences later. Hyun showed the message to her crew. It helped. A little. On the third day, with hours left before the system became impassable, they evacuated the last city. The radiation levels were critical. The heat was unbearable. The pilots flew through conditions that should have killed them. The last shuttle to launch was piloted by Taeyang. He had repaired his shuttle with borrowed parts and determination. He brought up the final group of 300 Vexnari from the southern continent. As his shuttle cleared the atmosphere, the sun's corona expanded suddenly. The radiation wave swept across the planet below. Everything on the surface died in seconds. Taeyang made it back to the ship. Barely. His shuttle's engines failed as he entered the landing bay. The shuttle crashed, but everyone survived. Hyun stood on the bridge and looked at the numbers. They had evacuated 6,800,000 Vexnari. They had lost 3 ships and 247 human crew members. There had been 7 billion Vexenari on that planet. They had saved less than 1%, but that 1% was 6,800,000 living, breathing people who would not have survived without the humans who came to help. Vixtal came to the bridge. His voice was quiet. "I do not have words to thank you. My language does not have words big enough. You do not need to thank us," Hyun said. "You needed help, we gave it. That is enough." The fleet limped toward the nearest neutral station. They were overcrowded, running on emergency power, and their crews were exhausted. But they had done something impossible. The Council enforcement fleet followed them, waiting, watching, preparing to arrest them all. The station called Haven's Rest was neutral territory. It belonged to no government and followed no one's laws except its own. It was a place where deals were made, where smugglers and merchants met, where people went when they wanted to avoid official attention. The 8 human ships docked at Haven's Rest 3 days after the evacuation. They were a mess. Engines barely working. Life support systems pushed far beyond their limits. Millions of refugees crammed into spaces meant for thousands. The Council enforcement fleet arrived 1 hour later. The station commander, a pragmatic alien named Zeth, contacted Hyun. "You have created a problem for me. A very big problem. The Council wants you arrested, but you have nearly 7 million refugees who will not leave their ships. What am I supposed to do with this situation?" Hyun was too tired to be diplomatic. "Let us rest. Let us transfer some of the refugees to better facilities. Then we will deal with whatever comes next." Zeth agreed, partly because it was the practical thing to do, partly because even he, a cynical station commander who had seen everything, was impressed by what the humans had done. The Vexenari refugees began moving into temporary housing on the station. It was still crowded, still uncomfortable, but better than being packed into the ships. The humans worked to repair their vessels. Daeho walked from ship to ship, helping where he could. He had not slept properly in 5 days. On the second day at the station, the Council sent their representatives. They came with official documents, legal citations, and arrest warrants for every human crew member who had participated in the rescue. The charges were serious: violation of the Treaty of Non-Interference, unauthorized military action, reckless endangerment. The list went on. If convicted, the crews would spend decades in prison. Soo-jin reviewed the warrants. They are thorough. The Council has been building this case carefully. They have evidence of every rule we broke. Hyun nodded. Of course they do. We broke all those rules. We knew we were breaking them. The Council representatives approached the human ships. They expected to make arrests quietly and efficiently. They were wrong. Thousands of Vexenari surrounded the human ships. They formed a living barrier between the enforcement officers and the humans. They did not threaten. They did not attack. They just stood there, refusing to move. Vixtal stood at the front. He addressed the Council representatives directly. "You want to arrest the people who saved us, the people who risked everything while you did nothing. If you want them, you will have to go through us first." The enforcement officers did not know what to do. They could not use force against millions of refugees. The images would be terrible. The galaxy was already watching this situation closely. Hyun came out of her ship. She walked through the crowd of Vexenari. They parted to let her through. She stood in front of Vixtal. "I appreciate this," she said quietly. "But you do not have to do this. We knew the consequences. We accept them." Vixtal looked at her. His insect eyes were hard to read, but his voice was clear. "No, you do not understand. You saved our children. You saved our elders. You saved people you had never met, who had nothing to give you in return, and now you will face punishment for that? This is not justice." Other Vexenari called out their agreement. The sound echoed through the station. The standoff lasted for 2 days. The Council enforcement could not arrest the humans. The Vexenari would not move. News of the situation spread across the galaxy. Videos circulated showing the Vexenari protecting their rescuers. Images of the destroyed planet. Testimonials from survivors. Public opinion began to shift. On many worlds, people started questioning the Treaty of Non-Interference. If the treaty meant watching billions die, was it really a good law? Protests formed on dozens of planets. Not just human worlds, other species too. Back on Earth, Hyon's sister worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She was a mid-level government official, but she had connections. She sent messages to sympathetic politicians. She leaked information to journalists. She made sure the story stayed in the news. The Earth government was in a difficult position. Officially, they had to condemn the rescue operation. It was illegal. It violated treaties. But privately, many officials were proud. The videos of humans risking everything to save strangers had made Earth's reputation soar across the galaxy. The Council finally agreed to a trial. Hyan and her crew would be judged before the Galactic High Council. The trial would be broadcast to billions of viewers across hundreds of worlds. It would be the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. Earth sent a legal team. The lead attorney was a woman named Bo-Ra. She was brilliant, famous for defending difficult cases. She had never lost a trial that mattered. Bo-Ra met with Hyan before the trial. She was direct and honest. You broke the law. That is clear. We cannot argue otherwise. But I can argue that the law itself is wrong, that the Treaty of Non-Interference has become a tool for cowardice, not a protection against exploitation. Hyan listened. Will that work? Bo-Ra smiled. I do not know, but it will be interesting to find out. The trial took place on the Council's central station. The chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from hundreds of species. Hyan and her crew sat at a long table. Across from them sat the Council prosecutors. The head prosecutor was named Drellmoth. He was not cruel. He was not evil. He genuinely believed in the importance of order and law. He opened the trial with a simple statement: the defendants violated the Treaty of Non-Interference. This treaty exists for good reasons. Without it, powerful species could interfere with weaker ones at will. The treaty protects all of us. If we allow these violations to go unpunished, we invite chaos. Bo-Ra stood to present the defense. She was calm and confident. The defendants did violate the treaty. We acknowledge this. But we must ask why the treaty was created in the first place. It was meant to prevent exploitation and colonization. It was not meant to turn us into bystanders to genocide. She presented evidence. In the past century, 17 species had faced extinction-level events. The Council had debated intervention in each case. In each case, they had decided to do nothing. In each case, millions or billions had died while the galaxy watched. A civilian historian named Young Ho had compiled this information. He had created a documentary. It showed the faces of the dead, the worlds that had been lost, the civilizations that had ended while the Council discussed proper procedures. The documentary was devastating. It played for 3 hours. Many Council members looked uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. A Council member named Kithara stood up. She was from a minor species called the Mothkai. She was not supposed to speak during the trial, but she spoke anyway. 20 years ago, my people faced a plague. It was preventable. We begged the Council for help. We provided evidence. We followed every protocol. The Council debated for 6 months. In those 6 months, 3 billion Mothkai died. By the time the Council agreed to help, it was too late. The plague had run its course. We have never forgotten. We have never forgiven. The chamber was silent. Kithara looked at Hyan. These humans did what we wished someone had done for us. They acted. They saved lives. And now we want to punish them for it? This is wrong. This Council is wrong. The trial continued for 3 more days. Witnesses spoke. Evidence was presented. The galaxy watched. On the final day, Hyan was asked if she had anything to say. She stood slowly. She was tired. She missed her ship. She wanted this to be over. I am not a hero, she said. I am a cargo ship captain who saw people dying and decided to help. That is all. I do not regret my actions. If I could go back, I would do the same thing again. Because watching people die when you can help them is not following the law. It is being a coward. And I am not a coward. The council deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, they announced their verdict. The vote was split. Not guilty of criminal intent, but guilty of violating council procedures. The punishment was symbolic. Fines that several wealthy supporters immediately offered to pay. Restrictions on licenses that Earth's government said they would not enforce. It was a compromise. The council saved face by finding them guilty of something, but the punishment was meaningless. Everyone understood what it really meant. The council did not have the courage to truly punish them. Public opinion would not allow it. More importantly, the council announced they would begin reviewing the Treaty of Non-Interference. Reforms would be discussed. New protocols would be developed. It would take years. But it was a start. Hyun and her crew walked out of the council chambers. Thousands of Vexnari waited outside. They erupted in celebration. The sound was deafening. Hyun felt strange. She had saved millions of people. She had changed galactic law. She had become famous across hundreds of worlds. But she did not feel like a hero. She just felt tired, and she missed her ship.